I'm David Crowley. I'm the writer and director of Gray State, and I'm a veteran. I'm a husband. I'm a father. And the interesting thing about this material, once you delve into it, is that everyone has to act within their own capacity to express this information. So Gray State has been my effort to kind of draw the human narrative out of all this terrifying information that we see all around us. And I think that's been my responsibility as a filmmaker to kind of craft a human story out of this. And I think what I want to definitely tell your listeners is that every time you look at some of these things happening, like, why isn't anyone showing this in a film? I mean, that is what I'm doing. That is what Gray State is.
Mitch Heil also said that he spoke with David, which I really found very interesting, why David is not letting people into his home at this point.
If the baby was sleeping or taking naps, you don't know what their routine was.
That's true.
It could be
maybe
that it
Kamel
wasn't letting in, but we don't know that.
That's speculation.
Yeah. Mitch, I'm guessing, actually came over. They probably talked in the driveway, and that was it. Danny August Mason is the one that I'm doubting that took place, because the very next sentence, read what this says. It says, next paragraph on the top of 160, Danny Mason spoke to David in the driveway. Danny Mason described David as being fragile and had lost a lot of weight. So now he goes out of his way to police to make another disparaging remark. And then later by saying, oh, I guess I was in there in his driveway. I was there. He needed to make something sound that he was gaunt, not in his right mind, lost weight, he wasn't taking care of himself, depressed, suicidal, who knows, but these are more seeds that we're planting. Now, the only way he can get these seeds to police is to say that he was there talking in the driveway. That's where I'm backing into the hypothesis of the whole statement is fake. It didn't happen. But how is Danny August Mason going to say that he looked gaunt and lost a lot of weight? He now has to insert himself in the driveway. So that's what I'm thinking. This is just my opinion once again, is that the statement to police was wrong altogether, was fake. All of it was a lie, because he needed to put David Crowley in a bad shape, in a bad light, to cast him in a bad light, lost weight, and did not look disheveled. Now, he does go on to say that Mr. Mason stated that this was not so much uncommon for David. Booth continued that when we would get wrapped up in projects and writing scripts for a movie, they would do this. So they would wrap up and spend 30 days and hole up. But he said fragile and lost weight. Those are two key words. David Crowley is a very healthy, in shape person, very focused on what he eats, his nutrition, very focused. He wouldn't be someone that would be looking fragile or lost weight. Now, not saying that it's true. Maybe in that case, maybe he had. Maybe it's what was true. But what I'm saying is, what leads down this road just back to the statement to police. I don't know the date I went over there to talk in the driveway. That to me means it is a lie. I don't think he went to talk to the driver. That's my personal opinion, because he needed time to make sure that the police knew that he was fragile and had lost weight.
Which is interesting, very interesting. Yeah, because now we have not only September. So basically, we have some of the Gray State goons saying from September until December, he's fragile, he's losing weight.
A steady decline is what they need to plant the story that for a 3 to 4 month period, things got progressively worse and ultimately ended in his death. We know that's not the case.
But you don't
why
hear.
Are we going back to all these other months to make it all bad? Is what I'm assuming, when they got together to say, what are we going to say to police? They came up with a bullet list of, you say this, you say this, you say this, and I'll say this. And that way our whole story jives. And at the same time, it's planting the seeds to police that sets up that this guy's suicidal. He's not in his right mind.
Right.
That's my opinion. Now, all this stuff could have happened.
Yeah. Good. But I mean, Danny August Mason saying that David Crowley was fragile in September is a big problem, because there are photos out there of David Crowley in September. He does not look fragile. He doesn't look any different. There was a whole garage sale. So it's just interesting, the people that are there in the last months of his life that are saying this, that he looked fragile. I know 3 of them: Danny August Mason, Mason Hendricks, and Sean Wright. Those, and maybe Joseph Seaton, maybe Adam Schaum. They may all say those same things, but you don't hear David's family saying that. You don't even hear Kamel's sister, when she goes and talks to David, she doesn't say that David looked like shit, that David looked like he hadn't been eating or anything like that.
On the October,
did she? Okay, maybe
we'll
she
get
did.
to that. I'm not sure, but I think
Yeah, we'll get to that in the future.
Negative to say that he didn't look normal. She had something negative to say. I don't know about that, but the best person would be to get the boy at the garage sale, the neighbor's boy at the garage sale that was talking to David about all this stuff at the garage sale when he was selling his equipment. He'd be a great witness, just to confirm or deny the characteristics of David from a physical standpoint. That's what the detectives should have done when the stuff did not start making sense. Go back and interview the witnesses, the boy across the street, the neighbor who liked David, had good conversation that afternoon. Yeah,
that's a great clip that I cannot find now, if anybody can help find that. But then you have Judy Prochnow, who said that kid had some mental issues, or he had something like that. And it's like, well, this is why people don't comment on that, because they're going to be attacked by these people.
You'll get followed up with the disparaging. Anything to discredit is what we've seen. Judy Prochnow's job or role in this whole thing was to discredit the people that are going on the right path, I think. The little boy, the garage sale across the street who was there talking with David, she knew that they had a good conversation, and he didn't look gaunt and lost weight, and the kid had a good time talking with him, it sounded like, for a couple of hours. Right. And so Judy comes in now and said that there's mental issues, mental illness, something. Well, that is a disparaging thing, because whether he had mental illness, maybe he does, maybe he did. We don't know this, but it wouldn't have been an impact of him enjoying 2 hours chatting with David Crowley for an afternoon. He had a good time doing it.
Yeah, and there were cops there too. They didn't, that nobody ever talked to the cops, say, hey, how did David look back in September? But the fact that we have photos that show he looks the same as any other thing. Why is Danny August Mason trying to paint this picture of David looking like this back in September that coincidentally lines with what other people are saying in December? The people who are claiming they are the last people to have spoken with David are trying to say the exact same things. You're saying, so for 4 months he looked like crap?
The narrative that's pushed by the same certain people are all telling the same story, which isn't the truth, but you're hearing the same story, very consistent, and the police bought into that. The detectives bought into that hook, line, and sinker. And so that's when we say that we don't have trust in the detectives doing their job. Did they do good jobs on other things? Maybe they didn't. I don't know. I'm guessing that the investigation was shut down by people higher up that told them not to look into it any further, versus them just being poor detectives. But this whole scenario is a mixture of so many things interwoven that's hard to piece out what was really going on. I just think that this whole Danny August Mason interview with police, all these things that he said and all these things that he stated, it is of my personal belief that all of it in these 2 paragraphs are a lie. I can't imagine any of it being true, but it's trying to serve a purpose. Now, anything, Sophia, on that?
Well, David talks about losing 14 pounds, getting back to the weight that he was before he went to Germany. So he's working out, he's working hard, he's writing. He did the whole BX sale, and he was very upset with Danny August Mason that day. Something happened during the BX sale, because he is very annoyed by Danny
so that was
August
September 9th was the sale, or the 7th or something?
I think it's the 17th.
Oh, okay.
I'm getting back to it. Let's see here. I was
And so
trying to find the day.
while you're looking that up, losing 14 pounds or putting muscle mass to something is possibly losing weight or is losing weight, but you're becoming more fit. These guys are all they're into CrossFit, cross training, and so that may be losing weight to be more healthy or to be fit. He used the word fragile, weak, gaunt. That's what comes to mind when you use the word fragile, and I think that was not true. Fragile. He may have lost weight. And he says
Okay,
a lot of weight.
I'm trying to find that actual thing
Well, she looks
because
for that, Greg. Anything else with how you consider the words used here? As far as he may have said he lost some weight, he was getting back to normal, eating healthier, but in fact he uses that David lost a lot of weight and looked fragile. Those are key words that didn't need to be used there. So if they didn't need to be used, they must have been used on purpose. He selected those words to tell the officers, and that to me is those are both meant as derogatory comments.
Yeah, he's
Plus,
definitely
throwing David under the bus.
Yeah, basically, he's building this storyline or trying to add to this storyline
Beefing
that
it
David,
up.
was on the decline, which is like, no, he wasn't, because there's a rise and then there's a fall. There's all of these things, and it's just, I just keep going back to the people that didn't mention that. His family members don't mention him being, losing weight or anything like that. It's very interesting. The people that do mention that are the same people you'll find in Eric Nelson's film.
I think
in the slot.
I think Danny August Mason, the Gray State guys, could have said, hey, they were really concerned about Comel's mother not doing well with cancer, very ill, in hospice. But I don't think David told those. I don't think those guys were aware that she was even having cancer and dealing with these issues, because I think they would have thrown that out there for fodder, more additional fodder to the police. But I don't think they knew that, so therefore they had to come up with these other things.
it was September 8th.
September 8th. Okay.
Mm-hmm. The universe may want me to destroy Danny Mason, since he has given indication that he wants to stand in my way. What a fool. But what Dan Sr. didn't read in the documentary was the garage sale is finally over. I can recover from this madness. It was a fun time, in fact. We got to meet many of the neighbors, good impressions all around, sold 5.5K worth, but then had the idea, why didn't I try to package it as a business model with assets for sale? I could have tripled my money like a boss if I found the right investors. What a bummer of an idea. To have right after selling. Anyway, Danny is my first threshold guardian, and either I will convert him to my cause or destroy him. His actions will decide.
Wow.
Doesn't that sound different than what we've heard? I mean,
Yeah.
Putting that, when you read that puts it in the proper context.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all these things taken out of context, which is what Eric Nelson's film does, which is what a lot of these people do. I don't know if they're doing it purposely, but in that film, a lot of the stuff just seems like it's taken out of context. Even stuff that we were involved in, Dan, is probably taken out.
A true documentary on this case and on this story would have a phrase and a quote like that Sophia read purposely in it to help the user or the viewer determine, what happened, what was the mindset of these people. Eric Nelson's movie cherry-picked all things that had negative repercussions, derogatory. It was all this to put David Crowley in a negative light. That's why it was so obvious propaganda for those when we saw it. You could just tell it was a propaganda piece. There wasn't two sides to the story to let you decide. But that's that's a very good point, Sophia, that he was a threshold that he had to either convert over, because moving forward there was no way to. They were butting heads, and so you needed to move above, below, to get on to the next phase, and it wasn't happening. It was stalling, and that's what the stress and the frustration was on David's side, that he couldn't even. They were dealing with medical mother, hospice care, everything else.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to switching cars and switching phone lines and cell phone providers, it was a lot of stuff happening. Rania was getting ready to go to, signing up for preschool. At the same time, the world, with a lot of things happening. And so we hear that in the term or the sense that they were pushing people away and they were isolating. Those kinds of terms and phrases come out, meaning negative once again, that David was on his way to suicidal. But a lot of things are going on. Now, the next paragraph says, the last time Daniel Crowley Sr., now the dad, saw David was on September 21st, 2014. I took Rania to the zoo. Daniel Crowley Sr. wrote, last minute he tried to discourage me from picking up Rania. David's father still picked up Rania and took her to the zoo. So a lot there. For those not familiar, the Minnesota Zoo, the biggest zoo in the state of Minnesota, is in Apple Valley. The Apple Valley is a location of the Minnesota State Zoo. It's a big, huge zoo. They live in Apple Valley, so that would be something to do for that age, for Rania, for that age, very close to get to. So that, I believe, could have happened going to the zoo. Now, the date...
Is it a big zoo, or is it a...
What's that?
Is it a big zoo, or is it a kind of a smaller zoo?
It would rival, the San Diego Zoo, or a huge, many acres, outdoor, inside, big ocean stuff, dolphins, whales, lots of things to go see.
Wow.
Animals, cougars, mountain lions, bears, grizzly bears. It's tons of things. And so when my daughters were small, we had an annual pass one year to go unlimited times to the zoo. We lived in Apple Valley, so you don't need to go and pack everything in a 6-day, a 7-hour event to pack everything in. You can go for an hour and take off, go for another hour and take off, go on a weekly basis or something. Very popular thing to do. It's very kid friendly too. Lots of things to see there, all sorts. I wouldn't say it's world renowned, but it's the Minnesota Zoo in Apple Valley, Minnesota is highly regarded. It's a must-see stop if you're traveling in the Twin Cities area. If you're from out of town, it's one of your top 10 things to do for visitors, for touristy people coming. So that would totally make sense to do it. Now,
that's pretty interesting that he would say that David didn't want him to do this, and that makes me wonder, like, between August, where David is telling him that I love you, that the dad is planning on some camping trip, and all of a sudden here we have Daniel Crowley Sr. wants to take Rania to the zoo, and David is trying to discourage that. That's pretty interesting.
Greg, let me ask you a question. Do you believe this statement took place? Let's start there. Is this whole thing another lie?
I mean, I wouldn't.
It is. It's all BS. All of it. None
Sure.
of this took place.
I would start with what the statement says and then break it down, which sounds like what you have done. You've listened to what they've said, and you don't buy it. So I can't go any further than that, and I don't know. I really don't know. All that I know is that this is what is in the documents. This is what they say, and so I kind of feel like, if this is accurate, then okay, then I kind of go based on that. Like, what?
Yeah, it could very well be accurate. What I'm looking at on my side is that all these characters are giving fishy stories and fishy statements that have one thing in common. They're making David look bad.
Right.
Whether he took her to the zoo or not, throw that out. Last minute, he tried to discourage me. Now, what father would discourage a loving grandfather from taking the granddaughter to the zoo? No one.
There's got to be some issue, right? There's got to be some issue. Well,
I'm saying that it didn't even took place because he's trying to make David look bad. I think they were already on the outs in September. He wasn't doing anything with his father. But his father lives 30, 45 minutes away. Did he drive up for the day? Tried to discourage him? He would have said, I'm not going to go home if I drove all the way here to do this. I don't know if any of it took place. Is it logical? Yes. Would the detectives buy it? Yes. And at the same time, are you helping to build up the credible story that David lost his off his rocker? Yes, he's doing all these things. Sophia, your thoughts? I don't personally, my opinion, once again, I think this is all BS yet. They have to feed BS to the detectives. I mean, this whole
David
stuff,
doesn't.
Daniel Crowley Sr., all you need to do is watch the Eric Nelson movie and just see when he's reading from this so-called script, or reading from what we know now as a script, none of it was true. He's lying through his teeth. He can't even. So the question is, why would a father of a murdered son, triple homicide, including your granddaughter that you love, be lying at all? So we got to take everything into consideration. We know later from the stuff that Sophia did that these so-called texts and phone calls in November and December did not happen. So now you have to go ask yourself, did the stuff in September even happen? Thoughts?
There are 2 phone calls. One was about 56 seconds long. The other one was 2 minutes long. They were late in the afternoon, from Dan Sr. to David. And then on David's journal for September 21st, it says chalking up the house before it gets cold. I think it might be cold now. And he's talking about that, saying that there's lots of housework to do, and Kamel is helping out with that. And then they talk about Anjum and Nyla and Sidra. But there's no mention of Dan Sr. There's no mention of the zoo and Ronnie. Nothing like that. I think that if he was busy, like he is writing in this whole paragraph, there's a lot of information. This is the one where he's talking about writing for 4 days in a row and thinking about going back to LA and having a steak with his lawyer friend and everything. And then he talks about what else? Just the chaos that's going on between Anjum and Nyla, or not Nyla, but Anjum and Sidra and Kamel, and talking about that and how the BX weight is vanishing profitably. And I'm on the other side of the hardest thing I've ever had to undertake. Those are his last words for that day. But nothing about the zoo, nothing about Ronnie.
Yeah, so I'm 50-50 on it. It certainly all could have happened. It certainly none of it could have happened, and more likely than not, bits and pieces of it or portions of it could have happened. That's what we're seeing from these characters along the way. That's just how it's been happening. We get a bunch of half-truths we don't know, and if you're starting to tell half-truths in a triple homicide investigation, that's raising antenna for the detectives. Just it's too goofy. Now the next one, Greg, do you have anything on that one?
Oh, he paused himself.
Okay, it says, continuing on, quote, after the zoo, Dan Sr. continued, I stopped in to talk. He was about to make a big movie deal. Talked about big shot lawyers from the IDS building. He was going to fly to LA to do final negotiations with the producers. He was going to be a millionaire by the end of the year. They were busy. Didn't seem like they wanted to have me hang around, so I left. That was the last time I saw David. Now, lots to unpack there. Go ahead, Sophia.
And I actually think that might have happened, that David might have spoke to him about that, because it's mentioned in the very first paragraph of the Day One Journal for September 21st.
Okay.
He's talking about that whole scenario of going to LA, making the deal and stuff like that with his lawyer and the producers. So,
and that we know was true from the facts in the actual case, that he did go out there a second trip back to LA, met with the producers, the Mikes, and did the negotiations, talked with, he says big shot lawyers from the IDS building. Now in the Minneapolis, in the city of Minneapolis downtown, the tallest skyscraper there is the IDS building. When it was first built in the 80s, it was a huge, almost like the World Trade Center towers or the Chrysler Building or the Sears Tower in Chicago. It was Minnesota's or Minneapolis's own version of being a big shot city. It was a big glass skyscraper, huge. Most businesses that were in there, because of the high rent, had to be attorneys, CPA firms, law firms, big shot businesses. You couldn't get in there with the rent until you were something substantial. So growing up in outstate Minnesota like these guys did, and me myself, if you want to rise to anything in the business world, you want to try to end your career at the IDS building. That was the thing for many people. That's to say that you've made it. If you're in Chicago, I'm in the Sears Tower. I have an office on the top floor. You know, it's a huge thing. That was the metaphor, so to say. So when he said big shot lawyers at the IDS, this was David beefing up the story, but while at the same time telling the truth. And so at the same time, David's father, Dan Crowley Sr., is a big-time engineer, very smart, has a lot of patents and things. Very smart, is a high-paid person for what he does for his business, but his business is outstate. It doesn't have big name recognition. They're not in a fancy office. His name and picture are not on the front page of business magazines. Dan Crowley had all that, shoving this all down the kids, shoving it down the throat all their lives growing up. What a big shot he was, and how much money he could make, and how intelligent. Now his son, whom he doesn't like the best, he likes, I think the daughter and Allison and Dan Jr., I think better, because once again, they're still in this fight with David. I don't think that he likes, now he's jealous because his own son is now top him. I'm the one meeting the lawyers, the big shot lawyers. I'm in the IDS building. I'm being flown to LA. These are things Dan Crowley Sr. has never done, right? So it's a power play at the same time that's going on. He doesn't like it. He's not impressed with it. And he's using the phrase big shot lawyers. That to me is another detrimental. It didn't need to be said. He could have said important or some high level lawyers. He says big shot. That's a shot. That's an underhanded compliment, right? A backhanded. It's not a favorable thing to say big shot. It's kind of laughing on the side, like idiot.
Kind of a slight.
Yeah, you're calling that you're meeting some big shot lawyers. He wouldn't say that in a good way. He would say that in a negative way. He's meeting with some big shot lawyers, kind of like that's the way he's saying it here. The IDS Tower in Minneapolis. You wouldn't bring that up unless you're trying to impress someone.
Wow.
So either Dan Crowley Sr. thought that David was trying to impress him, or he didn't like the egos battling here. He didn't take too kindly it. Now, we know those things were true. His office, legal firm for Lohman and Abdo was in the IDS building. Now, they could have been on the 3rd floor, 13th floor. It wasn't at the top, I'm sure. I've never heard of the law firm before. But he did go sign the negotiations in LA, and he could have been a millionaire at the end of the year. All those things are true. Here's the thing that catches. They didn't seem like they wanted me there, and they were busy, so I left. So it's a cry victim, once again, throwing David under the bus at how rude he was. What a prick he was. What a jackass he is. That's what I'm sensing from this terminology of words, once again. Throwing David under the bus, while at the same time saying how nice I am coming to take your daughter. I'm such a great grandfather of the year award to take your daughter to the zoo. So he needs to point out the fact that he had to leave because it got uncomfortable. Did that need to be said? Does that add any value to the investigation? No. But if you're trying to make David look bad, now it adds value because now it's adding to that credibility of him being a dickhead. This is his own father saying it. So, thoughts on this, Sophia?
Sophia, go ahead.
What do you think? Would a parent, what would this kind of verbiage and usage of words, and it's very condescending, is it not?
Yeah, the whole big shot, yeah, that is condescending. It's something like my dad would use towards me.
Yeah.
He's just been that
It's a slight.
way.
It's a
Yeah.
phrase you wouldn't use in something positive, Greg.
And then when he's talking about David and they were too busy, and that's why he left. I mean, if family comes over, you stop what you're doing so you could visit with them. And I find that extremely odd that David and Kamal wouldn't stop to speak with him. If that actually happened, then that is a signal to Dan Sr. saying, hey, we don't want you around. You need to move on out.
Time's up. We visited, but we got to move on. We got things to do, and maybe he's not good at picking up the vibe or the signals. I don't know, but he instead of saying I overstayed my welcome, I should have left, he puts it onto them, but that they were busy and they didn't want me there. They were the bad guys. That's the words he's using, is pointing the finger that I did nothing wrong. They didn't want me there, so I left. And so that's where I think that if he was being honest with the detectives and saying really what happened on the events leading up to the deaths, you wouldn't have phrases such as these, so backstabbing.
Right.
And those types of things. And this is all littered in the detectives' interviews with all these guys.
Right.
This backstabbing stuff.
I'm David Crowley. I'm the writer and director of Gray State, and I'm a veteran. I'm a husband. I'm a father. And the interesting thing about this material, once you delve into it, is that everyone has to act within their own capacity to express this information. So Gray State has been my effort to kind of draw the human narrative out of all this terrifying information that we see all around us. And I think that's been my responsibility as a filmmaker, to kind of craft a human story out of this. And I think what I want to definitely tell your listeners is that every time you look at some of these things happening, like, why isn't anyone showing this in a film? I mean, that is what I'm doing. That is what Gray State is.
Mitch Heil also said that he spoke with David, which I really found very interesting, why David is not letting people into his home at this point.
If the baby was sleeping or taking naps, you don't know what their routine was.
That's true.
It could be
maybe
that it wasn't letting in, but we don't know that.
That's speculation. Yeah.
Mitch, I'm guessing, actually came over. They probably talked in the driveway, and that was it.
But this is why, with that timeline where it's like, well, okay, this isn't really coming from David's dad, right? This is David's dad telling it to David's brother, and then David's brother sending it off to the cops.
This statement, as far as the big shot lawyers and stuff, was ultimately sent to detectives from Dan Jr., the brother, on behalf of Dan Sr. So he may have altered, edited, corrected, tweaked. Whoever did it, it's negative, and once again, it's manipulated, as what I'm.
Yeah, those are the things that I thought would be in Eric Nelson's film. Okay, let's hear from the dad. Let's hear what his interpretations are, et cetera, et cetera. But the way that this timeline reads, it doesn't read like that. It just reads like it's a third party talking about this while he gave his view on this, and They just kind of threw it out there, but it doesn't seem like it's something that came directly from David's dad to
I
the
see.
cops. That's the big problem that I have with this timeline that they have here. So I did
it would be
focus on
nice.
this timeline for that.
Also, Greg, it would be nice if
Yeah.
these characters would, over the next few years, as this gets older, come out of the woodwork and come and do an interview and say, here's what happened, here's what got mixed up, here's what I sent, here's what I tweaked before I sent it to detectives, here's where you guys are misinterpreting some of this stuff. That'd be great to have those individuals on.
Yeah, but a
really
father, but the father is not going to go against his son, right?
No, well, that'll never happen. Neither
Yeah.
of them. It'll never happen. But we have to keep that option open as people turn, and as people, who knows if they come, change their beliefs and become a Christian and say, let's get some of this truth out. This is too hard for me to carry all these years. I'm guessing after 7 years now, this is very heavy on a handful of people's lives.
I would agree.
Dan, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
How far away is the zoo from David's house approximately?
How far is David's house from where?
The zoo, approximately.
The zoo would be, 2 miles, 2-3 miles. Yeah, it's not. It's close.
Because there are 2 phone calls, one at 4:39 p.m. from Dan Sr. and again at 5:31 p.m. So the zoo closes around dusk, correct?
I don't know. There's a lot of inside stuff that you can do with lights on. The outside stuff you couldn't do. Does it close? I think we'd have to find out from the hours if it's a weeknight or a weekend night.
Because this is supposedly a Sunday, correct? The 21st.
So it could be a 5 o'clock. It could be 5 o'clock closing on a Sunday, and those phone calls then make sense.
Yeah, which means that he probably called late, like around closing time. They probably left around 5-ish. But would it take him 31 minutes to get home?
No.
If it was only 2 miles?
There's no traffic in Apple Valley on a Sunday evening. It would be in 10 minutes, 10 at the most, probably.
So maybe that's when he left, and then he turned around and he called David. But at that time, it's dinner time. They're working on dinner. They're getting Rania settled in for the night, fed, decompressing her.
Yeah, because she's in school. She has to get up the next morning. And so they probably have a Sunday evening, routine.
And
maybe the dad was overstepping his bounds. I don't know.
Yep. That's what I'm thinking here. And maybe that is true, that they were just trying to get her from deviating from that routine, because once you do that, things go off kilter pretty quickly.
Yep. And that is fair enough. I'm sure Greg knows all about the routine with a couple little ones.
So
so that was really it about the father. The next paragraph, we get into Mitch Heil. Is there anything left then, or should we move forward?
No, I think
anything with Dan Sr.? Okay. On September 24th, Mitch Heil signed over all rights for Hothead Productions and Bullet Exchange. He had legally signed over all his rights to David, Detective Booth reported, and was no longer part of those companies. End quote. Mitchell also felt that the only way to save the relationship as friends was to separate business and friendship. Now, I agree 100% on that. This is a true good friend acting in good faith, Mitch Heil, doing the right thing. Signed over everything, and they saved the friendship. That makes perfect sense. Now, according to Mitchell, Detective Booth reported, quote, Bullet Exchange was not a successful company, and they did not make much money towards that, end quote. The top of page 161 starts, the two friends spoke in David's driveway, once again, the driveway talk, since David would not let Heil into the house. Now, I have a question with that. He was probably there and was probably talking and probably in the driveway. But where do we get this not let into the house. And once again, is that true? Is that a factual statement, or is that something that was inserted? Continuing on, David, quote, David had physically and mentally changed according to Mitchell, end quote. Booth continued, his physical appearance looked frail, and he wasn't talking like the David that Mitchell knew, end quote. Here we go. Now, instead of fragile, it's frail. And his physical appearance, and he throws in mentally he changed. So whether Mitch Heil was involved in this cover-up or not, it certainly leads me to believe that the phrases he's using, if these are indeed true, that he's using the same bullet points as the other guys.
Mm-hmm.
He would not let him into the house. Was that true? Was that not true? Was that inserted? He mentions his physical and mental capacities. Why are these things all said? Answer?
It might actually be true that he didn't let them in the house. Stick with me for a second.
Yep.
David is writing, and he's working very hard on this script. He has changed everything from the 2013 script to this new one. Maybe he doesn't want anybody seeing what he's doing, because it doesn't seem like they know what he has written. And I don't know, maybe that is something. But I'm looking at a photo right now from September 21st, and David doesn't look frail. It's a darker photo. He has paleo in his lap. He's got this huge smile on his face. I really think that they are using frail and fragile as kind of like buzzwords to paint the whole decline story. But you don't see that. Yeah.
But that would lead me to believe that Mitch Heil's in on it if he's using those phrases. Or are you saying that because touch points, bullet points, and catchphrases are one thing, and just actually giving the detective an honest answer is another thing. These guys are using catchwords, catchphrases, which are done on purpose. Is Mitch Heil involved or included in the cover-up, or is he just helping solidify that, you know what, in his mind, David looked goofy and he probably did do all this. Maybe this did happen, and it was a coincidence that he used the word frail. That's what I'm getting at.
But two of them using that word. That sounds like they matched their stories up.
Yeah, it seems too coincidental to me to be just off the cuff statements. It seems like Mitch is helping and assisting when the detectives talk to him, that he's planting the seed that goes along with everyone else in the Gray State. So whether he was compromised or talked to or whatever, it sounds like to me that he's going along with what he's supposed to say with the catchwords and catchphrases. Now,
or did the detective say, did he look frail? Did he look fragile? Has he lost weight? And Mitch was like, yeah, I guess he kind of looked frail.
That I would agree with if the question was leading, as far as a leading question after talking to Dan Crowley, Danny August Mason. He's frail, he's lost weight. And if he asked those same leading questions and he just answered, yeah, it sounds good, then they could put it in the report by saying he looked frail, and it helps the report on the police detective side to beef up their story that David did. You're right.
Yep.
I think it's interesting that they used, mentally, not only physical, now he's going mental as well, and frail rather than fragile. Didn't let him in the house. Now, my question is this. He sent them the request to sign the paperwork over. He did it. That could have been done on a printout, signed in a date, scan it into your scanner as a PDF file, and send it on back email. There's no reason for this to be hand-delivered, did it? Is that why he was there? Do we know why he was actually there? He just needed a response on email. He didn't need to physically hand him over the sheet, drive to David's house, and talk on the driveway. Catch what I'm talking about?
The thing is David says on the 21st, the BX is mostly gone. Mitch and I are amicable. He signed his release, which was the biggest thing of all. He signed his release on the 21st. Why was Mitch over there on the 26th discussing this?
24th?
Uh,
Good question. Now, there may have been with all this equipment that he may have had, hey, let's split this up. I'll take this, you take that, and we'll sell the rest. You know, that kind of a deal. And he physically came over to physically pick something up. And maybe he emailed the response. My question is, if he was open and he didn't come inside the house, the garage was open, all his stuff was probably there. Maybe he backed up his car, loaded everything up in the garage. And maybe he didn't even ask to go in. But somehow we get the phrase, would not let him into the house. And my question is, who inserted that? The police to beef up the story? Mitch to beef up his story? Or was it true? Hey, can I come in? No, I won't let you in. I have a hard time believing that. But
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is all based on what the cops say. We're not getting direct quotes from Mitch Heil. That's why we always wanted to have some of those quotes later on from him to see, okay, well, you know, what did he say about this? But these are all summaries from what the police say. That's why, Dan, I know you have actually asked them to say, hey, can we get some of these recordings, some of the actual recordings, so that we can get our facts straight? Right?
Yeah, the audio recordings are on the server there for the Apple Valley Police for this case. We should be able to, a FOIA request, get those recordings. We can't get them.
Do we have to sue? Do we have to sue?
Wouldn't that be nice
those?
to get, just to see how that conversation went? Now, then I wouldn't want one or two. I'd want them all. And I think that's why they're saying no, because they know that we're going to send in requests for 85.
Oh,
but it would be interesting
literally
to hear
said no.
The tone of these. And you can tell, I think we'd be able to pick up then, is why I don't think they're letting that out, is if their detectives are honestly doing their job, or if you could tell by, like, the three of us listening to the recordings of those interviews, were they leading questions? Were they going down a path that they didn't really care? They already knew the answer, that they were forced from higher ups to shut this case down. Could we pick up on vibes like that where they didn't take much interest? Or were they trying to do the best they could? You know, I think we'd pick up on some of that hearing the audio. If they were legitimately doing their job, asking good questions, what their interview process was like. You know, I don't know. I think it'd be very helpful to have that, just to get the tone on all these, you know, right, wrong, or indifferent, just to get, how did that play out? So that's Mitch Heil. You know, it said on the next paragraph, it says the breakup was not surprising, considering that in late 2012, Mitch Heil broke away from the Gray State Project. So that was 2012. We're here now doing an interview with police in 2015 with Mitch. He goes over at the end of 2014 in the fall to get this last equipment. We know that in that 2013 year, David did change. He now has a contract. He's now moving to a web series or a TV series or a internet series. He has a contract. Things are all in place. Most of his posts in the month of September on Facebook and social media is David Crowley is on a cloud nine. He's on almost a manic. Things are going so well. But the interview with police of his close buddies, all we hear about is how bad he looks and how bad he's acting and what a jackass he is. That's what causes the disconnect for me. September, he's on cloud nine, talking about some of the best things in his life are happening. But yet the interviews with these people are saying that he looks like a meth head. You know, that's where the disconnect is. And that's why it's important for these podcasts like this and books like yours, Greg, to break down the detail, because it isn't consistent with what was actually happening. Going on, it says Mitch Heil broke away from Gray State. David was taking the project in a different direction than the trailer. The movie was so far away from the concept trailer, end quote. Mitch said. Detective Booth wrote that after talking to Heil, quote, it started going heavily into the conspiracy of killing people, end quote.
Okay, time out on that one.
So
He is referring to the 2013 script because the 2014 script is not filled with conspiracies and is not as dark as what is being referred to here. This is why I do not think that the Gray State guys knew what David was writing. And so they're trying to blame everything on that 2013 script, saying that David went down this dark path and he got lost in his writing and everything. Well, yeah, he was writing, but it wasn't dark. It was more like Red Dawn-ish kind of.
Drama.
Yeah, fighting the NWO, the elites. More action than it was conspiracy and dark. So I don't know. I mean, it's.
And so
But he does.
that is true. You know, the movie was so far different than the trailer, the concept trailer. All this stuff was happening. Now we know from talking and listening to Mitch Heil on different interviews and on different shows, he himself, Mitch Heil, is not an awake person. He's not, familiar with what's going on behind the scenes in the real world. He looks at this stuff as a crackpot. This is all conspiracy stuff, So we know that as a fact that he's not awake anyway. So he would look at these various scripts and say, whatever, I don't believe it, but I'll help you out if you need some help, you whack job. He doesn't buy into any of this stuff. Danny Mason now, Sean Wright, and some of these other guys are what I would call awake people that know what's going on. They're trying to, wake people up with their documentaries and things like this. Federal Reserve, things like that. They are guys that are awake, whether I like them personally or not. They're awake. Mitch
And
Heil
I could see that.
Never was anything close to that. He was clueless on the big picture stuff.
And I can see that straining their friendship.
Yep.
A lot. So.
Awesome. Well, that may be a great place to end this one here. Got about 1 minute left. So, any final thoughts? There's so much here in this.
Yeah, there's so much here. I think the Mitch Heil stuff is good. They broke away. They broke off to save the friendship. Broke up, left the business. But he does throw in there that, he's heavily into conspiracy of killing people. It's one more jab to the, that feeds in this one more seed to the police that the guy's a nutcase.
Right.
And so it's hard to tell if he's doing it on purpose or he's actually believes it, or these talking points coincidental, or did the detective write the talking points into his report to help beef it up? So when they turn in the reports to the lead investigator, Sergeant Gummert, he can read them all and say, wow, this David Crowley's nuts. We got two things going on here. We got the people pushing the issue, and we got the police and the detectives pushing their agenda to quickly close this case and say that he did it to make it all go away.
Right.
Were they both involved together with the cover-up, or are they both running their separate cover-up operations? That's what's interesting to me, I guess.
I always assumed that Mitch Heil and David were working together up until that fall. And now it's saying that they broke up, not surprising considering that in late 2012, Mitch Heil broke away from the Gray State Project. Were they no longer working with Hothead at all?
Well, there's two businesses that they had. So maybe one wrapped up in 2012 and the other one they kept going after that. I don't know, but it was Bullet Exchange and Hothead Productions was the two that they were involved with. I don't know the end dates on those. Sophia, you probably would have more information than I even would. But
I'm looking at the videos, and the last ones that were filmed were 9 years ago. So 2013? Is that about right?
Yep.
So then I guess David just broke away to work strictly on the 2013 script and 2014 script for Gray State.
I'm guessing. I don't know I think they just drifted and fell apart when the conspiracy stuff. It's hard to have those friends or friendship or relationships with people that don't align with your thinking. As we all know firsthand, it's you got to either shut that off or you got to be friends on a topical level. But once folks find out that you're into the stuff that we're into and trying to wake people up, it is off-putting to those who are asleep. They don't know. They can't even grasp. They just think that you're off your rocker. And so that's, I think, what Mitch Heil. I think they just slowly parted ways.
Does Mitch Heil still have ownership of those two YouTube channels, the BX and Hothead?
Greg, do you know?
No, nope. I'm sorry. Nope. I don't think he does. I don't think he wants it. It sounds like Mitch Heil doesn't want anything to do with this project, anything to do with all of this stuff. I wish that Mitch Heil would at least look at some of the facts, read my book if he is a reader, but at least look at some of these facts that prove that your friend did not do this thing. He did not do this. That's all that we are asking Mitch Heil to do. We're not asking him to agree with whatever theory or anything like that. But man, come on. This is your friend. This is your fellow soldier. This is your business partner, and you're not going to spend time to look into why he is innocent? I mean,
he's a smart guy. Mitch Heil's a smart guy. He could read this book in an afternoon, I'm sure, and hopefully it could sink in. But he could be one guy that maybe could turn this around if he could turn that corner.
Yeah. It's simple. I mean, when I talked to Mason Hendricks, he basically said that like they were throwing things at Mitch Heil, and Mitch Heil was just like he's not interested in it. So I think he's more open to it, and maybe as time goes by, maybe he'll be more open to it. But Mitch Heil is not, from my view, he's not a part of the Gray State Goons. He doesn't agree with us. He doesn't agree with them. And the more pressure they put on him, the more he kind of leans towards us. Just like, dude, let's just look at what happened. What are the facts that prove that your friend did this? And I just really think the more that we can, he may be someone who is more open to it.
He'd be another one to the invitation's open. If he
it's open.
To jump forward and say, hey, I'd like to communicate and maybe do a one-time interview or something, more than happy for any of us to talk with Mitch Heil. I'd love to get his story, his take on this. But anyone associated with this case, it's very easy to reach out and reach any one of us. Mitch would be a good guy, I think, to get down the road.
I actually looked at comments that Mitch Heil had left under another one of David's friends who was talking about David, and he has bought the official narrative hook, line, and sinker.
He's bought it?
And he's bought it.
Oh, bought it. Okay.
And it's really sad because I had hope that we would be able to talk to him. This was 2 years ago that I was reading through it, the whole comment section. And I wasn't shocked. I was so disappointed by the words that he was saying. And I don't know if Mason Hendricks and Sean Wright actually just worked on him enough and told him enough to convince him or what, but at that time he truly believed that David did this heinous act and was a jerk and everything.
And unfortunately, a lot of other people do. There's a lot of people out there that do it. We're just hoping to wake up some people with podcasts like this, read the book, understand some of the details. There's a lot to digest.
The fall of Gray State.
fall of Gray State did not happen when David died. Gray State fell when those who worked alongside of David took the project and tried to make it their own. Gray State fell when those associated with the social media pages claimed David was guilty within weeks, if not days, of the bodies being found. This is long before the DNA, ballistics, electronic records, and financial records all proved there was no evidence of their friend's guilt. The team simply jumped the gun and concluded David was a child killer, a wife killer, and a coward who committed suicide. That is the fall of the Gray State. Bury truth in a shallow grave. Grab your shovel and keep digging. On the surface, we were told David Crowley was guilty of a double murder-suicide. We were told the case was closed, that David was the perpetrator, and the public was not in any danger. We wanted to believe them. But what they told us was not the truth. The more we began to dig for the truth, the more truth we found buried under the surface.
I really hope that Mitch will at least pick up our book collaboration when it's finally out.
Yeah.
And read all the inconsistencies and sees that there is a different side to the story. Because maybe he doesn't know about the actual facts. Maybe he has heard just whatever they wanted to tell him so that he would buy the narrative. Honestly, I think you should reach out to him. I would love for it to be after the book comes out so he could read it, hopefully, and see that there's a different side to the story. You know, between the blood spatter, between the DNA, the AT&T calls, or the calls that never happened that people said that did. You know, hopefully, maybe he will see that the official narrative is not what really happened. That's what I'm excited about with this book, is that people will finally get to see how we lay out the facts. And it's not in an hour-long video. It is actually in written form, and we reference everything. So, I mean, it's hard to dispute the facts once it's referenced against the reports and actual books and journals and stuff. But that's what I'm really hoping for. Anyway, because I'm not the most eloquent speaker, but at least I could get it down on paper. Yeah, I don't think that. No, I actually, after seeing the DNA, I do not believe that the government killed David. The DNA rules out unknown people, unrelated people, but it doesn't rule out the related individuals.
Right.
And the wording that they use is very curious. And once people read that chapter, I hope that they will see that the possibility of somebody coming into the house that was known to David and Camille very well could have killed them. But once they read the blood spatter chapter, that's where the convincing comes in.
Right.
Because that actually shows that the official narrative is completely wrong.
Thanks, Greg, and thanks, Sophia. We'll see you guys next time.
Hello, everyone. This is Sophia from the Gray Stage Podcast, and I'd like to invite all of our listeners to join the Justice for David Crowley and Family group located on Facebook, where we have over 4,000 members. In this group, we welcome discussions regarding the case and have all the documents located in the file section for everyone to review. If you like, you are welcome to visit Greg Fernandez's website called The Gray Stage, which is located at thegraystagewordpress.com. You can find his book and all of the official documents for this case at his website. Lastly, I'd like to introduce you to my friend, Catherine Michelle. Her YouTube channel is called Catherine Michelle Investigates David Crowley. Please feel free to stop by her channel and give her a like and a listen. Until our next podcast, keep seeking the truth and justice for David Crowley and his family.
Hey, what's up everybody? This is Ross from Planet X Filmworks channel on YouTube and the Zodiac Files True Crime series. Check it out, and shout out to Greg and the Gray Stage channel. Their content is amazing.
Are you interested in the paranormal? Murder mysteries, cryptocurrency, and thought-provoking interviews? Then check out Crypt Rick's I've Been Thinking on YouTube, or every Monday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Studio A at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Welcome to the Crypt.
A simple truth. It really is this simple. Either you believe David Crowley is innocent or you believe he is guilty. If you believe David Crowley is guilty, you are wrong. If you believe David Crowley is innocent, you are right. It really is that simple. A United States Army veteran is dead. His wife and his 5-year-old daughter are dead. A thorough investigation would only conclude with authorities admitting they lacked evidence to support their accusations. If authorities were to admit the case remains unsolved, they would also have to admit that the public may still be in danger. I am not able to solve this case. My interest is in forcing authorities to admit David Crowley is innocent. The reason they refuse to talk about this case is not because they are confident of David's guilt. They lack confidence in their allegations. Their department wishes to move on, but they are only lying to themselves. They must know the simple truth, and they need to publicly admit this. Their credibility depends on it now. The unspoken truth is that David is innocent until proven guilty. Why are authorities running from this simple truth? How long do they think they can run for? You cannot run from God. You cannot run from your nightmares, and you cannot run from the facts. Why would anyone want to? What could possibly motivate someone to try? If you cannot prove David Crowley guilty, then he remains innocent. It's as simple as that. So the resistance we face is disgusting. If David was guilty, the evidence would be right in our faces. If David was guilty, resistance to our questions would not exist. If David was guilty, facts would be evident. There are no facts to prove David guilty. There are only facts which prove David innocent. Hence the resistance to getting justice for David Crowley and family. Who cares? Do the people who closed this case and decided to not speak about it ever again really care? Do the friends who accused David Crowley of being guilty days after his body was found really care? Perhaps they only care about spreading the accusations of David's guilt instead of researching the facts of this case. They don't seem to care about the facts which prove David innocent. Truth is a simple thing. Justice does not die. Facts prove David is innocent. go. Shadows and light. I have lived in darkness. I have lived in the shadows. Now I live in the light of Jesus Christ. He is the light. We can be shadows of that light, or shadows running from the light. We have free will. Do we run to Jesus, run to the light? Or do we run from Jesus and run into the shadows? Do we shine or do we hide? Many people do not have a relationship with Jesus Christ. But it is never too late. We are forever reminded of the thief on the cross. The story is simple. The options are two. The choice is yours to make. At any time in your life, you can believe in Jesus Christ and build a relationship with Him. The thief, at the very end of his life, as he was crucified next to Jesus Christ, believed and was saved. The same thief, while others mocked Jesus, asked for forgiveness and recognized Christ was the Son of God. The thief recognized his own punishment as just and also knew Jesus did not deserve what was about to happen to him. A second thief who was crucified next to Jesus said, "If you are the Christ, save yourself and us." The first thief, the one who believed in Jesus, replied, "Do you not even fear God, seeing you are under the same condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we receive the due reward of our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong." Then the thief who believed in Christ turned to Jesus and asked, "Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Jesus answered, "Assuredly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise." Luke chapter 23, verses 39 to 43. Wouldn't you like to know more about the thief who believed in Jesus and why he said what he said? Disbelievers will always find an excuse to not believe in the Bible. The various translations of the word are a common excuse used by many people who just do not want to believe in the Bible. But let's think about this. Various translations can be used by the devil to confuse people and turn them away from Jesus Christ. That is the devil's goal. The devil tempts us with such doubts on purpose and as planned. Yet the light still shines through the doubt as planned. The translations and our views on the translations are all part of the plan. This is the test which brings us the same choice as the two thieves crucified next to Jesus. One chose to believe, the other did not. In the end, the choice is yours. You can believe in Jesus Christ and accept the free gift of salvation, or you can choose not to. You can live in the light, you can live in the darkness, or remain in the shadows. The choice is always yours. So are the consequences and blessings of your decision. With Jesus Christ, you are truly alive. Without Jesus Christ, you are truly dead.